The hot soup hit my face like a slap from hell itself. I felt the burning liquid drip from my hair down my cheeks, pooling in my lap as the entire dining room fell into a silence so thick you could choke on it. My brother Ryan stood over me, his face twisted with rage and maybe too much bourbon, his empty bowl still trembling in his hand. The words that came out of his mouth next would change everything. "You have 15 minutes to get the hell out of this family." I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just wiped the soup from my eyes with the back of my hand, reached into my bag, and pulled out a file so thick it made a satisfying thud when I dropped it on the table. My mother's 53rd birthday cake sat untouched between us, its candles still flickering like tiny witnesses to what was about to unfold. "All right," I said, my voice steady as a surgeon's hand. "In 15 minutes, everything you own will be gone." The room went dead silent. Every eye locked onto me in that mysterious file. But before I tell you what happened next, before I show you how I took back everything they tried to steal from me, I need you to understand how we got here. If you want to hear how this ends, hit that like button, drop a comment below telling me if you've ever had to cut toxic family out of your life, and subscribe because this story is going to get wild. Let me take you back to where it all started, to a childhood that looked picture perfect from the outside, but was rotting from within. I grew up in what people called a nice house on Ashley River Road in Charleston, South Carolina. It wasn't the mansion my parents pretended it was when they posted carefully angled photos on Facebook, but it had a view of the water and a wraparound porch that looked impressive in pictures. That was always the priority in our family. Looking impressive. Being impressive was optional. My father, Richard Fletcher, worked in commercial real estate. He specialized in strip malls and medical office buildings, which meant he made decent money but never quite enough to support the lifestyle my mother, Patricia, demanded. She was a school administrator at a private academy, a job she leveraged to get Kayla admitted at a reduced tuition rate while constantly reminding everyone how important and connected she was. My older brother Ryan arrived first, and from the moment he took his first breath, he could do no wrong. I've seen the baby albums. Hundreds of photos of Ryan. Ryan's first steps. Ryan's first day of kindergarten. Ryan dressed as a pumpkin for Halloween. Ryan. Then I came along 3 years later. There are maybe 20 photos of me as a baby, most of them accidental backgrounds in pictures of Ryan. My mother likes to tell the story of my birth as if it's funny how she had to be induced because I was stubborn even then, how I ruined her figure, how I cried constantly and never slept. She tells this story at parties. People laugh. I learned to laugh too, even though something inside me died a little each time. Kayla arrived when I was 5, and suddenly, the house that had been all about Ryan became all about Ryan and Kayla. The golden boy and the princess. I was just there taking up space, consuming resources that could have gone to the children who mattered. I remember being 7 years old and asking my mother if I could take ballet classes like Kayla was about to start. My mother looked at me with this expression I would come to know well, a mixture of annoyance and dismissal, and said, "Ballet is expensive, Naomi, and you don't have the body for it anyway. Why don't you go read a book or something?" Kayla was 3 at the time and built exactly like me. But she was Kayla, so she got ballet. She got tap. She got jazz. She got a sparkly costume for every recital while I sat in the audience next to my father, who spent the whole time checking his phone. When Ryan wanted to play Little League, my parents bought him a $70 glove and drove him to practice 3 times a week. When I asked if I could play soccer, my father said the registration fee was too high and girls' sports weren't really worth the investment anyway. I was 9 years old and I learned that my interests literally had no value to my parents. Middle school was when the financial favoritism became impossible to ignore. Ryan got a top-of-the-line laptop for his 13th birthday because he needed it for school, even though I was using a computer from 2005 that took 10 minutes to boot up. When I asked if I could have a new computer, too, my mother said I should take better care of my things and maybe I could use Ryan's old laptop when he upgraded. Ryan's old laptop never materialized. He sold it to a friend for beer money. Kayla's 10th birthday party cost more than $3,000. I know because I saw the credit card statement sitting on the kitchen counter. A bounce house, a petting zoo, a magician, and a custom cake shaped like a castle. My 13th birthday, which happened 2 months earlier, had been a store-bought cake and a card with $20 in it. When I pointed out the disparity, my mother looked at me like I'd grown a second head and said, "Kayla is more social than you, Naomi. She has more friends. We're not going to throw a big party when you'd just sit in the corner reading anyway." She wasn't wrong. I would have sat in the corner reading. Because I had learned by then that trying to make friends, trying to fit in, trying to be like Ryan or Kayla was pointless. I was different. I was wrong. I was less than. So I retreated into books, into studying, into making myself small enough that maybe they wouldn't notice how much space I took up. High school was its own special hell. Ryan had been popular captain of the lacrosse team, dated the prettiest girls, went to every party. My parents beamed with pride at his mediocrity, convinced he was destined for greatness despite his 2.7 GPA and complete lack of direction. When he graduated, my father created a job for him at his real estate firm. Junior associate. $35,000 a year to answer phones and occasionally show up to open houses hungover. I had to get a job at 15 because I wanted things that my parents said they couldn't afford. A graphing calculator for AP Calculus. New shoes because mine had holes in them. A winter coat that actually fit. I started washing dishes at Magnolia's, a diner on King Street, making $8 an hour plus tips. I worked every weekend and 3 nights a week after school. My grades never slipped. I maintained a 4.2 GPA while working 20 hours a week. My parents never once asked how I was managing. They were too busy planning Kayla's Sweet 16, which cost more than my entire year of wages. I learned to be invisible. I learned to need nothing. I learned that asking for help was an invitation for disappointment, so I stopped asking. I saved every penny in a checking account my parents didn't know about. I applied to colleges on my own, filled out financial aid forms in the school library, wrote scholarship essays during my lunch breaks. When I got into the University of South Carolina with a partial scholarship, my parents said congratulations and immediately started talking about where Ryan might want to work next, since he was getting bored with real estate. Ryan lasted 8 months at my father's firm before he quit because his boss, our father, expected him to actually work. He bounced between jobs for the next 2 years. Personal trainer. Insurance sales. Assistant manager at a gym. He got fired from every single one, always because of someone else's incompetence, never his own. My parents paid his rent. They bought his groceries. They made his car payments. And every single time they told him he was just going through a tough patch, that he'd find his calling soon, that he was too smart and talented to be stuck in these dead-end jobs. I was working full-time as a CNA at a nursing home while taking a full course load at USC, and nobody ever called me smart or talented. I just was. Kayla coasted through high school with her parents doing most of her homework. I know because I saw my mother typing Kayla's English papers late at night, complaining about how hard the teachers were on her baby girl. Kayla got into a decent college, not because of her grades, but because of my mother's connections and a sob story essay about overcoming adversity that my mother wrote for her. The adversity was having a hangnail during a cheerleading competition. Meanwhile, I was studying organic chemistry and human anatomy, sleeping 4 hours a night, living on ramen and coffee, trying to keep my head above water financially, while my family threw money at Ryan and Kayla like they were investment, properties that would eventually pay dividends. The only person who ever saw what was happening was my grandfather. Harold Fletcher was my father's father, but he was nothing like my father. Where my dad was all flash and image, Grandpa Harold was substance and integrity. He had been a family physician in rural South Carolina for 40 years, making house calls until he was 70, treating patients who paid him in eggs or home-canned vegetables or sometimes just thank you notes. He lived in a small house near Folly Beach, a simple 2-bedroom cottage that smelled like coffee and old books. The furniture was worn but comfortable. The walls were covered with photos of patients, babies he had delivered, families he had cared for. There was one photo of our family from when I was about 8 tucked in the corner. We were all smiling. It was a lie, but Grandpa Harold kept it anyway. I started visiting him when I was 16, driving my beat-up Honda Civic that I had bought with my own money. At first, it was just because I needed a quiet place to study. My house was always chaos, always Ryan's drama or Kayla's social life or my parents arguing about money. Grandpa Harold's house was peaceful. He would make me tea and sit in his recliner reading while I spread my textbooks across his kitchen table. After a few months, we started talking. Really talking. He asked me about school, about my plans, about what I wanted from life. Nobody had ever asked me that before. When I told him I wanted to go to medical school, wanted to be a surgeon, his face lit up in a way I had never seen in my own parents' faces. "You'd be an excellent surgeon," he said. "You've got steady hands and a steady mind. That's rare, Naomi. That's a gift." I almost cried. I was 17 years old, and it was the first time anyone in my family had called any part of me a gift. He started teaching me things. He showed me his old medical journals, explained procedures, talked about the patients he had lost and the ones he had saved. He told me that medicine wasn't about being the smartest person in the room. It was about showing up, about caring when it would be easier not to, about seeing people as people instead of problems to solve. Your father never understood that, he said once, and there was sadness in his voice. Richard wanted the status of being a doctor's son without any of the sacrifice. He wanted the money and the respect without the work. When he realized medicine would be hard, he chose the easier path. I visited Grandpa Harold every Sunday without fail. It became my sanctuary, the one place I felt valued. He would make lunch, usually something simple like grilled cheese and tomato soup, and we would sit on his porch and watch the marsh grass wave in the wind. He told me stories about my grandmother who had died before I was born. She had been a teacher, patient, and kind, everything my mother wasn't. You remind me of her, he said once. Elizabeth had this quiet strength. People underestimated her because she was gentle, but she had a spine of steel when it mattered. You've got that same quality, Naomi. Don't let anyone convince you that kindness is weakness. Ryan never visited. He always had excuses. Golf with friends. A date. A hangover. My parents only came by once a month, staying exactly 30 minutes before claiming they had somewhere else to be. Kayla visited maybe twice a year, spending the entire time on her phone, sighing dramatically if Grandpa Harold tried to have an actual conversation with her. They didn't see him declining. But I did. It started with small things. Grandpa Harold forgetting where he put his keys. Struggling to open pill bottles. Having trouble with buttons on his shirts. Then the tremor started in his right hand, subtle at first but getting progressively worse. He was diagnosed with Parkinson's when I was in my sophomore year of college, and my father's response was to suggest he sell the beach house and move into a retirement community. It's too much for him to manage alone, my father said over dinner, as if Grandpa Harold wasn't a grown man capable of making his own decisions. Those places have nurses on staff. It would be easier. What my father meant was it would be easier for him. Easier not to feel guilty about not visiting. Easier not to pretend he cared about his own father's well-being. Grandpa Harold refused to move, and I made sure he didn't have to. I started coming by twice a week instead of once. I helped with his medication, set up a pill, organizers showed him exercises to help with the tremor. When he started having trouble driving, I drove him to his appointments. When grocery shopping became difficult, I did his shopping for him. My parents didn't help. They didn't even offer. Ryan certainly didn't. Kayla sent a fruit basket once, which Grandpa Harold didn't eat because he was diabetic, something she would have known if she had ever bothered to learn anything about him. By the time I started medical school at the Medical University of South Carolina, Grandpa Harold's condition had worsened significantly. The tremor was constant now. He needed help with basic tasks. His doctor recommended home health care, but Grandpa Harold hated the idea of strangers in his house. So I did it. Between classes and studying and clinical rotations, I took care of my grandfather. That's when I met Sarah Mitchell. She was an ER nurse at MUSC, 5 years older than me, with short blonde hair and a no-nonsense attitude that I immediately loved. We met in the hospital cafeteria during my first week of medical school. I was eating a sad-looking sandwich and studying pharmacology, and she sat down across from me without asking. "You look like you're about to fall asleep in your textbook," she said. "When's the last time you slept?" "What day is it?" I asked. She laughed. "Tuesday. I'm Sarah." Naomi. We became friends fast, the kind of friendship that forms when two people recognize something in each other. Sarah was from a working-class family in North Charleston. She had put herself through nursing school while raising her younger brother after their mother died of cancer. She understood what it meant to be the responsible one, the one who kept everything together while everyone else fell apart. I told her about my family situation, about taking care of Grandpa Harold while trying to survive medical school. She started helping. She would come by his house on her days off, check his vitals, adjust his medications, just sit with him so I could study. Grandpa Harold loved her. He called her his bonus granddaughter, the one who actually cared. "Your family is insane," Sarah told me one day. We were sitting on Grandpa Harold's porch while he napped. "They just let you do all of this alone." "They're busy," I said automatically, the excuse I had been making for them my whole life. "Busy with what?" "Being selfish." She shook her head. "Naomi, this isn't normal. You know that, right?" I did know, but knowing it and accepting it were different things. Some part of me still hoped that if I just did enough, sacrificed enough, proved my worth enough, they would finally see me. Finally love me the way they loved Ryan and Kayla. During my second year of medical school, Ryan announced he was starting a tech company. Health Track, he called it. It was going to revolutionize how people monitored their fitness and health data. He had big ideas, big presentations, and absolutely no technical knowledge or business experience. My father gave him $50,000 to get started. My mother bragged about her entrepreneur son to everyone at her school. I watched from the sidelines as Ryan hired his friends, rented an expensive office space, bought everyone MacBooks and standing desks, and spent money like he had already succeeded instead of having to earn success. He went to networking events in expensive clothes talking about disrupting the healthcare industry without understanding the first thing about healthcare. He doesn't even know the difference between systolic and diastolic blood pressure, I told Sarah. But he's giving interviews about revolutionizing health monitoring. Let me guess, Sarah said. Your parents think he's a genius. They're already planning how to spend the money when he sells the company for millions. Sarah rolled her eyes. Meanwhile, you're actually in medicine, actually helping people, and I'm guessing they barely acknowledge it. She wasn't wrong. When I matched into a surgical residency at Charleston General, one of the most competitive programs in the Southeast, my parents said congratulations and then spent an hour talking about Ryan's latest pitch to investors. Kayla didn't even send a text. Ryan asked me if doctors made enough money to invest in startups because he was looking for additional funding. My residency was brutal in the way all surgical residencies are brutal. 80-hour weeks, 36-hour shifts, learning to function on no sleep and stale coffee, making life and death decisions while my hands shook from exhaustion. I loved it. I was good at it. My attendings praised my steady hands, my calm demeanor in crisis situations, my ability to focus under pressure. I was becoming the surgeon I had always wanted to be. But it meant less time with Grandpa Harold. Less time to help him, to sit with him, to just be there. The guilt ate at me. I would finish a shift and drive straight to his house, finding him sitting in his chair struggling to eat dinner because his tremor was so bad. He never complained. He would just smile and say, "There's my doctor. Tell me about your day." So I would. I told him about the appendectomy I assisted on, about the trauma case that came in at 2 a.m., about the attending who was teaching me how to tie surgical knots with my eyes closed. His face would light up with pride, and for those moments I would forget how tired I was. Ryan never asked about my work. Kayla actively avoided me because I talked about gross medical stuff that made her uncomfortable. My parents would occasionally ask how residency was going, but they would glaze over the moment I started talking clearly, waiting for me to finish so they could change the subject to something more interesting. 3 years into my residency, Grandpa Harold's Parkinson's took a turn for the worse. He fell getting out of bed and broke his hip. The surgery went well, but the recovery was hard. He needed round-the-clock care, at least temporarily. My father suggested a nursing home. My mother agreed it was probably for the best, and they could sell the beach house to pay for it. "Absolutely not," I said. We were having a family dinner, the first one I had been to in months because I rarely had time. "He doesn't want to go to a nursing home." "It's not about what he wants, Naomi," my father said. "It's about what's practical. You can't take care of him. You're working all the time. I'll figure it out." "You'll burn yourself out," my mother added, but there was no concern in her voice. Just annoyance that I was making things complicated. "So come help me," I said. "You're his son," I looked at my father. "You're his daughter-in-law. Ryan and Kayla are his grandchildren. We could rotate, take turns, make sure he's never alone." The silence that followed was damning. My father looked away. My mother suddenly found her wine glass fascinating. "Ryan said I've got the company, I can't just drop everything. Kayla said I'm not really good with sick people." "Right," I said. "Of course." I hired a home health aide using money I didn't have, eating the cost myself because I couldn't let Grandpa Harold go to some facility where he would be alone and scared. The aide, a kind Jamaican woman named Claudette, came during the day while I was at the hospital. I took over at night, sleeping in Grandpa Harold's spare room, waking up every few hours to check on him. Sarah helped whenever she could. She brought groceries, cooked meals that Grandpa Harold could actually eat, sat with him when I had to work. She became family in a way my actual family never was. "Why do you do it?" Sarah asked me one night. We were sitting on the porch after Grandpa Harold had fallen asleep. "Why do you keep trying with them?" "Because they're my family," I said, but the words sounded hollow even to me. "Family is supposed to show up, Naomi. Family is supposed to care. Your family just takes and expects you to keep giving. Maybe I'm not giving enough." "Stop," Sarah said firmly. "Stop making excuses for them. You are enough. You have always been enough. They're the ones who are broken, not you." I wanted to believe her. But 30 years of being told you're not quite good enough leaves scars that don't heal easily. Grandpa Harold recovered from the hip surgery, but he was never the same. The fall had scared him, aged him in a way that broke my heart. He started talking about death, about making sure his affairs were in order, about what he wanted to happen after he was gone. I need to update my will, he told me one afternoon. There are things I need to take care of. You don't need to think about that now, I said, adjusting his pillows. Yes, I do. His hand, trembling but determined, reached out to take mine. I see what's happening, Naomi. I see how they treat you. I see you giving everything and getting nothing back. That's going to change. 3 months later, on a Tuesday morning in March, I found Grandpa Harold in his bed. He looked peaceful, like he was sleeping, but his chest was still. He had died sometime in the night quietly without calling for help. Part of me wondered if he had known it was time and chose to go gently without making a fuss in the way he had lived his whole life. I sat beside him for 2 hours before I called anyone. I held his hand, which was already cold, and told him about the surgery I had done the night before. A young woman, car accident, internal bleeding. I had gone in with my attending, worked for 6 hours to repair the damage, and we had saved her. She would live. She would go home to her family. She would get a second chance. You taught me how to do that, I told Grandpa Harold's still form. You taught me that showing up matters. That caring matters. That people are worth fighting for even when it's hard. I'll keep fighting. I promise. When I finally called my father to tell him his father was dead, his first question was about the house. What would happen to the house? Were there any debts? What was the situation with the estate? I hung up on him. The funeral was small, held at a chapel near the beach. Grandpa Harold had wanted something simple, and I made sure that's what he got. Ryan showed up 20 minutes late, smelling like alcohol and making jokes with Kayla about the terrible traffic. My mother cried, but it was performative, the kind of crying that made sure everyone saw how upset she was. My father stood stiffly in his black suit, checking his watch every few minutes. I was asked to give the eulogy. I stood at the podium and looked out at the maybe 30 people who had come. Most of them were Grandpa Harold's former patients, elderly people who remembered the young doctor who had delivered their babies or sat with them when they were sick. My family took up one row. They looked bored. I talked about Grandpa Harold's dedication to medicine, his belief that healthcare was a calling, not a career, his kindness to people who couldn't pay him, his patience with the difficult patients, his joy in helping others. I talked about how he had taught me what it meant to be a doctor, not just technically, but morally. I talked about how he had shown up for his patients every single day, for 40 years, never complaining, never cutting corners, never treating anyone as less than worthy of his best effort. I didn't mention that his own son hadn't visited him in months before he died. I didn't mention that his grandchildren had treated him like an obligation rather than a blessing. I didn't mention that I had been the only one there at the end. But everyone in that chapel knew it anyway. After the service, people came up to me and thanked me. They told me stories about Grandpa Harold, about how he had saved their child, or sat with their dying parent, or shown up in the middle of the night for an emergency. They told me he had been a good man, that he would be missed, that I was clearly his granddaughter in all the ways that mattered. Ryan didn't come to the burial. He said he had a meeting with potential investors that he couldn't reschedule. Kayla left right after the service because she had a hair appointment. My parents stayed for the burial but spent the whole time on their phones. When it was over, my mother hugged me briefly and said, "Well, that's done. Will you come to dinner on Sunday?" "No," I said. "Naomi, don't be difficult." I said no. I drove to Grandpa Harold's house after the burial. It felt wrong that he wasn't there, that the house was empty and silent. I sat in his chair, the one he had sat in for 20 years, and let myself cry for the first time since he died. I cried for him, for me, for the family I would never have, for all the years I had wasted hoping things would be different. That's when I heard the knock on the door. Mr. Patterson was a lawyer in his 60s with white hair and kind eyes, and a briefcase that looked like it had seen better days. He introduced himself as Grandpa Harold's attorney and asked if he could come in. I made coffee because that's what Grandpa Harold would have done, and we sat at his kitchen table. "Your grandfather updated his will 6 months ago, Mr. Patterson said, pulling out a thick folder. He was very specific about his wishes, and he wanted you to understand them fully before anyone else in the family was informed. He slid a document across the table. Last will and testament of Harold Fletcher. I started reading. Everything. Grandpa Harold had left me everything. The house, the investments, the rental properties. I didn't even know he owned the savings and retirement accounts, everything. The estate was valued at approximately $1.7 million. I stared at the number, unable to process it. He was very clear, Mr. Patterson continued, that this was not a gift, but recognition of the love and care you showed him throughout his life. He wanted you to have the security to pursue your medical career without the financial stress that had burdened you for so long. There was more. A letter in Grandpa Harold's shaky handwriting written when he could still write legibly. "My dear Naomi," it began. "If you're reading this, I'm gone, and I hope I went peacefully without being too much trouble. That would be just like me, wouldn't it? Trying not to inconvenience anyone even in death. But here's the thing, sweetheart. You were never an inconvenience. You were the joy of my last years. You were the proof that the Fletcher line wasn't completely broken, that kindness and dedication still existed in our family. You showed up. Every single Sunday, every single time I needed you, you showed up. That's worth more than any amount of money, but I'm giving you the money anyway because you deserve security. You deserve to build a life without constantly struggling. You deserve to know that someone saw your worth and wanted to honor it. Your father will be angry. Ryan will be furious. That's their problem, not yours. They had the same opportunity you did. They could have visited. They could have cared. They chose not to. This is not about punishing them. This is about rewarding you. You earned this through love, and that's the only currency that ever really mattered to me. I included a no contest clause because I know they will try to challenge this will. Let them try. The law is on your side, and so am I, even from beyond the grave. Build a beautiful life, Naomi. Fall in love. Travel. Buy yourself something frivolous. Do whatever brings you joy. And maybe, just maybe, forgive yourself for being the only good thing that came out of this family. You were always enough. You were always more than enough. With all my love and pride, Grandpa Harold." I read the letter 3 times before I could speak. When I finally looked up at Mr. Patterson, his eyes were sympathetic. "He also wanted me to tell you," the lawyer said gently, "that you don't have to tell your family about the will right away. You can wait until you're ready, until you feel strong enough to handle their reaction. This is your inheritance, your choice, your timeline." I thought about Ryan and his failing company, always asking for money, always entitled to help. I thought about Kayla and her expensive lifestyle funded by our parents' willingness to go into debt for her. I thought about my parents and their favoritism, their blindness, their decades of making me feel less than. "I'll wait," I said. "Mr. Patterson nodded. "That's probably wise. In the meantime, let me explain some additional provisions your grandfather included." He walked me through the entire estate. The 3 rental properties in Charleston that generated $60,000 a year in passive income. The investment portfolio that Grandpa Harold had built slowly and carefully over decades. The life insurance policy with me as the sole beneficiary. The no contest clause that would strip anyone of any inheritance if they challenged the will, plus make them liable for all legal fees. "Your grandfather was thorough, Mr. Patterson said. He knew exactly what he was doing, and he had the mental capacity to prove it. Multiple doctors evaluated him and signed statements. There's video of him explaining his reasoning. If anyone tries to claim undue influence or diminished capacity, we have mountains of evidence to counter it." I left that meeting with a folder full of documents and a decision to keep quiet. Some instinct, some deep knowledge of how my family operated told me to wait. Told me to watch. Told me they would reveal themselves if I gave them enough rope. I was right. 6 weeks after the funeral, I got a call from Ryan. It was the first time he had contacted me since Grandpa Harold died. "No, how are you doing?" or "I'm sorry for your loss." Just straight to the point. "Hey, Naomi, I need to talk to you about something important. Can we meet for coffee?" I said yes, curious what he wanted. We met at a Starbucks downtown. Ryan looked terrible. Dark circles under his eyes. Wrinkled clothes. The confident swagger he usually carried was gone, replaced by something that looked like desperation. "Health Track is in trouble," he said, not bothering with small talk. "The investors pulled out. We're basically bankrupt. I'm looking at lawsuits, Naomi. Serious legal trouble. Employees are suing for unpaid wages. The IRS is auditing us for tax issues. I need help." "What kind of help?" "Money," he said bluntly. "I need about $100,000 to sort this out, pay off the debts, maybe relaunch with a better strategy." $100,000. Said like it was nothing. Said like I was supposed to just hand it over because he was my brother and that's what family does. "Ryan, I'm a surgical resident. I don't have that kind of money." "But you will," he said, and something in his tone made my skin crawl. "When Grandpa's estate gets settled, you'll get a portion. We all will. I just need an advance, basically. You can pay me back when it all goes through." "The estate isn't settled yet," I said carefully. "These things take time. So call the lawyer," Ryan pressed. Speed it up. Tell him it's urgent. Family emergency. He'll listen to you. You were always his favorite. Favorite. Like Grandpa Harold's love was something I had stolen from Ryan rather than something I had earned. Like spending every Sunday with him for a decade was cheating somehow. I can't do that, Ryan. His face changed. The desperation became anger. Can't or won't. Does it matter? Yeah, it matters. It matters because I'm your brother and I'm asking for help and you're sitting there acting like you don't owe me anything. I don't owe you anything. The hell you don't. You've always been so selfish, Naomi. Always keeping everything for yourself. You never helped with anything growing up. You were always off by yourself acting superior like you were too good for this family. I almost laughed. The revisionist history was stunning. But I kept my face neutral and said, I'm not giving you money, Ryan. He stared at me for a long moment and I saw the calculation in his eyes. Saw him deciding something. Then he stood up, knocking his chair back. Fine. When the estate settles and you get your share, don't come crying to me when you realize how much you need family. Because that's all you're going to have. Money and no one to share it with. Enjoy that, Naomi. He left. I sat there with my cooling coffee and realized this was just the beginning. 2 weeks later, Kayla called. She was crying hysterical, saying she needed to see me right away. We met at her apartment, a place my parents were paying for while she pursued a graduate degree in communications that she would probably never finish. I'm in so much trouble, she sobbed. Someone stole my identity and took out credit cards in my name. I'm looking at $40,000 in debt and I didn't spend any of it. The credit card companies are saying it's my responsibility. I don't know what to do. Did you file a police report? The police said they can't do anything without proof of who did it. But I know who did it, Naomi. It was Ryan. I sat up straighter. What? He asked me for my social security number last year, said he needed it for something with Grandpa's estate, some kind of beneficiary form. I gave it to him because he's my brother. But now I'm getting these bills and I can't pay them and my credit is ruined and I'm going to be sued and I don't know what to do. She cried harder. Part of me, a very small part, felt bad for her. But mostly I felt vindicated. This was what happened when you trusted people who only saw you as a resource. I'll help you file a fraud report, I said. But Kayla, you need to understand that if Ryan did this, he needs to face consequences. I can't press charges against my own brother. Then you're going to have to pay the debt. I don't have $40,000. Neither do Mom and Dad. They're already helping Ryan with his legal fees. Of course they were. Ryan could commit fraud, tank a business, and still get help. But I had worked myself to exhaustion taking care of Grandpa Harold, and nobody had offered me a dime. What do you want from me, Kayla? I need money. Just enough to pay off the credit cards. Then I can start over. I don't have that kind of money. But you will. When Grandpa's estate settles. Everyone knows he was loaded. He had rental properties and investments, and that house. When it gets divided up, we'll all get something. I just need an advance. There it was. The real reason for the tears and the crisis. They knew about the money, or at least suspected it existed, and they were circling like vultures. I can't help you, I said. You mean you won't? Does it matter? She looked at me with real hatred then. You know what? Ryan was right about you. You are selfish. You're cold and selfish and you care more about money than you do about family. I hope you're happy alone, Naomi. Because that's all you're ever going to be. She kicked me out of her apartment. I left without arguing, without defending myself, without trying to make her understand. There was no point. That night I got a text from Sarah. Turn on the news. Channel set. I turned on the TV and saw a story about healthcare fraud. HealthTrack was being investigated by the FBI for falsifying data provided to investors, for stealing patient information, for violating HIPAA regulations. Ryan's face was on the screen looking panicked, refusing to comment as reporters shouted questions at him. My phone rang. Sarah, please tell me you didn't give him any money, she said. Not a penny. Good. Because he's going down hard. I heard from a friend at the courthouse that the IRS is also going after him for tax evasion. He's looking at serious jail time, Naomi. He asked me for $100,000, I told her. He asked you for money to fund his criminal enterprise. If you had given it to him, you could have been charged as an accessory. You dodged a bullet. I sat down on my couch, my whole body suddenly exhausted. They all think I'm selfish because I won't help them. You're not selfish. You're smart. There's a difference. Grandpa Harold left me everything. The whole estate. $1.7 million. Properties. Investments. Everything. There was silence on the other end. Then Sarah said very quietly, "They're going to lose their minds." "I know. When are you going to tell them?" "I don't know. Part of me wants to just keep it secret forever. Let them think the estate is tied up in probate or something. But another part of me wants to see their faces when they find out. They'll try to contest the will. Let them try. There's a no contest clause. They'll lose everything and have to pay the legal fees. So what are you going to do?" I thought about it. I thought about Ryan's entitlement, Kayla's manipulation, my parents' blind favoritism. I thought about 30 years of being invisible. 30 years of being less than. 30 years of hoping for love that was never coming. "I'm going to wait," I said finally. "I'm going to wait for them to make their move. Because they will. They're going to try something, and when they do, I want to be ready." Sarah was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "You're not just going to tell them no, are you? You're planning something." "I'm planning justice." "Good," Sarah said fiercely. "They deserve whatever's coming to them. Just promise me you'll be careful. People get crazy when money is involved." "I promise." But I wasn't worried about them getting crazy. I was worried about what I was going to become. Because something cold and hard was forming in my chest, something that felt like years of resentment crystallizing into purpose. I had tried to be good, tried to be patient, tried to be understanding. And where had it gotten me? It was time to stop being nice. It was time to be strategic. The next 3 months were a masterclass in calculated patience. I went to work, did my job, saved lives, pretended everything was normal. But behind the scenes I was preparing. I met with Mr. Patterson multiple times, going over every detail of the estate, making sure every legal protection was in place. I hired a private investigator to document Ryan's fraud and Kayla's involvement in spending money that came from my parents' accounts, money they claimed they didn't have when I needed help with school. The investigator, a retired cop named Frank Morrison, was thorough. He found evidence of Ryan using company funds for personal expenses. He found proof that Kayla had written checks from my parents' account without permission to fund her lifestyle. He found documentation of my father creating fake invoices to channel money to Ryan's business. It was all small-scale fraud, not enough for major criminal charges, but enough to destroy them socially and professionally. "Your family is a piece of work," Frank told me, handing over his final report. "I've been doing this for 20 years and I've never seen such casual corruption. They genuinely believe they're entitled to take whatever they want from whoever they want." I paid Frank his fee, a considerable amount, but worth it. Because I wasn't just going to tell them no. I wasn't just going to reveal the inheritance. I was going to systematically dismantle every lie they had built their lives on. Sarah thought I was going too far. "Just tell them about the will and cut them off. You don't need to destroy them." "Yes, I do," I said. "Because if I don't, they'll spend the rest of my life trying to manipulate me, guilt me, extract something from me. I need to make sure they understand that I'm not a resource anymore. I'm not a backup plan. I'm not family. That's dark, Naomi. No, that's survival." In the middle of all this planning, I got a call from my mother. She wanted me to come to her birthday dinner. Her 53rd birthday. The whole family would be there. It was important to her. She missed me. She loved me. All the words she had never really meant before, but they sounded so sincere on the phone. "Please, Naomi," she said. "We barely see you anymore. I know you're busy with the hospital, but surely you can take one evening for your mother's birthday." I knew this was a trap. I knew Ryan and Kayla had probably put her up to it, knew they were planning to ambush me about money. But I decided to go anyway. Because I was ready. I had all my documentation prepared. I had consulted with Mr. Patterson about the best way to legally protect myself. I had rehearsed what I would say, how I would respond, how I would stay calm no matter what they threw at me. I bought my mother an expensive gift anyway. A pearl necklace from a boutique on King Street. $2,000. More than I should have spent on someone who had never valued me. But I needed her to know that I had money, that I was successful, that I didn't need them, even though they clearly needed me. The day of the party, I got a text from Sarah. "Are you sure about this?" "Because I have a bad feeling." Like a really bad feeling. I'm sure I texted back. "This ends tonight. One way or another." I put on a nice dress, did my hair, put on makeup. I looked good. Professional. Successful. Everything they had never believed I could be. I put the wrapped gift in my car along with my file folder, the one I had been carrying with me for weeks now, waiting for the right moment. I drove to my parents' house, that place I had grown up but had never really been home. The driveway was full of cars. They had invited other people, probably to witness whatever they had planned. Perfect. I wanted witnesses. I walked up to the front door, my heart steady, my hands steady, my purpose clear. I was about to walk into a room full of people who had hurt me for 30 years. And I was going to make sure they never hurt me again. I rang the doorbell. My mother answered, her face lighting up when she saw me. Naomi. Oh, sweetheart, you look beautiful. Come in, come in. The house was warm, full of people, full of noise and laughter. I recognized some faces. Family, friends, neighbors, my parents' church group. Ryan was standing by the dining table talking to a man in a suit, gesturing animatedly. Kayla was in the kitchen with my mother's friends, laughing at something on her phone. My father saw me and came over, shaking my hand formally. Good to see you, Naomi. Your mother's been excited about this all week. Everyone was being nice. Suspiciously nice. Like they had all been briefed to be on their best behavior, to make me feel welcome, to soften me up for whatever was coming. We sat down for dinner. The table was beautiful, covered with food that looked catered. My mother made a speech about gratitude and family and how blessed she was. People toasted her. She glowed with the attention. Then we opened presents. Mine was opened last. My mother gasped when she saw the pearl necklace, put it on immediately, thanked me effusively. For exactly 3 minutes I felt seen. Then Kayla gave her a gift card, and my mother seemed equally pleased. The conversation turned to memories, to stories about the good old days. All the stories were about Ryan and Kayla. Remember when Ryan hit that home run? Remember when Kayla won that pageant? I sat there invisible again, but this time I didn't mind. This time I was watching, noting, preparing. Ryan started drinking heavily. Bourbon, his drink of choice. Glass after glass. His voice got louder, his gestures more aggressive. He started talking about business, about opportunities, about how he was planning a comeback. I just need some capital, he said loudly enough for the whole table to hear. That's all that's holding me back. Capital and support from people who understand vision. Several people nodded politely. I said nothing. Ryan turned to look at me. You know, Naomi, you're doing well as a doctor, right? Making good money. Everyone was looking at me now. I kept my face neutral. I'm a resident. I make about $60,000 a year. But you're going to be making real money soon, right? Surgeons make bank. And you must have saved a ton living in that tiny apartment, driving that old car. I live within my means. That's good, that's smart, Ryan said, his words slightly slurred. But family helps family, you know. When one person does well, everyone should benefit. That's what family means. Is it? I asked quietly. Yeah, it is. Like if I had money, I'd help you. I'd help Kayla. I'd help Mom and Dad. Because that's what you do. You don't just hoard it. I see. So when Grandpa's estate settles, we should all get equal shares. That's only fair. We're all his grandchildren. There it was. Out in the open, in front of witnesses. I almost smiled. Ryan, my father said quietly, this isn't the time. No, Dad, it is the time. Because Naomi's been weird about this whole thing. She won't talk about the estate. She won't tell us what the lawyer said. It's suspicious, you know. Like maybe she's trying to keep something from us. I'm not keeping anything from you, I said calmly. Then what did Grandpa leave? What's the estate worth? When do we get our money? The room had gone quiet. Everyone was listening now, pretending they weren't, but clearly invested in this drama. Why don't you ask the lawyer? I suggested. We did, Kayla chimed in. He said he can't discuss it with us. Only with you. Which is weird, right? Like we're family too. Are we? I asked. My mother's face went pale. Naomi, what does that mean? It means, I said, setting down my fork, that I'm tired of pretending. I'm tired of sitting here listening to you all rewrite history, pretend you were loving and supportive, pretend you treated me like family. You didn't. You never did. That's not fair, my father said. No, what's not fair is spending my entire childhood being invisible while Ryan and Kayla got everything they wanted. What's not fair is working full-time while going to college because you wouldn't help me. What's not fair is taking care of Grandpa Harold alone while all of you were too busy. What's not fair is sitting here now listening to you act like you're entitled to money from a man you couldn't even be bothered to visit. Ryan's face flushed red. We visited him. Once a year, if he was lucky. I was there every week for 10 years. So spare me the family loyalty speech, Ryan. You don't know what loyalty means. You manipulated him, Ryan spat. You manipulated a sick old man so he'd give you his money. That's elder abuse, Naomi. That's illegal. Is it? I asked. Tell me, Ryan, how many Sundays did you spend with Grandpa? How many times did you take him to doctor's appointments? How many times did you help him with his medications or his groceries or just sit with him so he wouldn't be alone? I was busy. With what? Defrauding investors? Stealing from Kayla's identity? Taking money from mom and dad while claiming you were broke? The room went dead silent. Ryan stood up so fast his chair fell over. You don't know what you're talking about. Don't I? I looked at Kayla. Tell everyone about the $40,000 in credit card debt Ryan racked up in your name. Tell them how he stole your identity. Kayla's face went white. Naomi, stop. Tell them, I pressed. Tell them how he committed fraud and you're the one paying for it. That's between me and Kayla, Ryan shouted. You had no right to bring that up. Just like you had no right to bring up the estate at Mom's birthday dinner. Or was this whole party a setup to ambush me about money? My mother was crying now. We just wanted to have a nice family dinner. No, you wanted me to fund Ryan's next scam. You wanted to guilt me into handing over money I don't even have yet. You wanted to do what you've always done, which is prioritize Ryan and Kayla over me and expect me to just accept it. The man in the suit Ryan had been talking to earlier stood up. I think I should go. This seems like a family matter. No, stay, I said. This concerns you too. Are you one of Ryan's potential investors? The man looked uncomfortable. We were discussing possibilities. Then you should know that Ryan is currently under investigation by the FBI for healthcare fraud, by the IRS for tax evasion, and that his company filed for bankruptcy 3 months ago. He owes approximately $600,000 to various creditors. He's not a good investment. The man grabbed his jacket and left without another word. Ryan turned to me with pure hatred in his eyes. You just destroyed my last chance. No, Ryan. You destroyed it yourself. I just told the truth. That's when he grabbed the bowl of soup from in front of him. I saw it happening, but I couldn't move fast enough. The hot liquid hit me full in the face, burning, shocking, soaking into my dress and dripping down onto the pearl necklace I had bought for my mother. I heard gasps. Someone screamed. I tasted tomato and basil and rage. Ryan was standing over me, his face red with anger and alcohol. You have 15 minutes to get the hell out of this family. 15 minutes to pack up your self-righteous attitude and leave. We don't need you. We never needed you. You were always the mistake, always the one who didn't fit in. So go. Get out. And don't come back. I wiped the soup from my eyes. My hands were steady. My voice when I spoke was cold and clear. All right. In 15 minutes, everything you own will be gone. I reached into my bag and pulled out the file. It hit the table with a heavy thud that made everyone jump. The room fell into absolute silence. Every eye was on me. I opened the file slowly, deliberately, letting the tension build. I had waited 3 months for this moment. I was going to savor every second. Let me make this very simple, I said. Since you all seem to think you're entitled to Grandpa Harold's estate, let me read you exactly what he wrote in his will. I pulled out the first document. To my grandchildren, I leave the following to Naomi Fletcher, who demonstrated consistent love, care, and genuine concern for my well-being throughout my life, particularly during my illness. I bequeath the entirety of my estate, including all financial assets, real property, and personal belongings, valued at approximately $1.7 million. Explicitly excluded from any inheritance are those who showed indifference during my lifetime and failed to demonstrate familial love and support. I looked up. Ryan's face had gone from red to white. Kayla was staring at me with her mouth open. My parents looked like they had been slapped. That means you get nothing, I clarified. 0. Not a penny. Not a house key. Not a photograph. Nothing. That's not legal, Ryan sputtered. He was sick. He didn't know what he was doing. Oh, but he did. I pulled out the second document. This is a certificate of mental competency signed by 3 independent physicians 6 months before his death, confirming that Grandpa Harold was of sound mind and fully understood his decisions. There's also a video of him explaining his reasoning in which he specifically mentions that you, Ryan, had not visited him in over a year despite living 20 minutes away. I pulled out the third document. This is the no contest clause. It states very clearly that any heir or potential heir who challenges the validity of the will automatically forfeits any claim to the estate and must pay all legal fees incurred by the estate in defending the will. Those fees would run approximately $200,000. So please, Ryan, challenge the will. I'd love to see you try. This is unbelievable, Kayla whispered. He left you everything. He left me what I earned, I corrected. Through loyalty, through care, through showing up. Things you know nothing about. But we're family, my mother said, her voice breaking. Doesn't that count for something? You tell me, Mom. Did it count when I needed help with college and you said you couldn't afford it while sending Kayla to private school? Did it count when I was working full-time taking care of Grandpa Harold and none of you offered to help? Did it count 5 minutes ago when you all sat here and watched Ryan throw soup in my face? Nobody answered. I pulled out the fourth document. The IRS wants $437,000 from you, Ryan. Back taxes, penalties, interest. They've already filed a lien. Ryan's mouth opened, but no sound came out. This one's my favorite. I held up the fifth document. Your debt to First Charleston Bank. $600,000 secured by your condo, your car, everything. The bank was going to foreclose. I paused. But I bought your debt 3 weeks ago. Which means Friday at noon your condo gets auctioned on the courthouse steps. Monday morning they're taking your car. It's all perfectly legal. The color drained from his face. You can't, he whispered. Already done. I turned to Kayla. Your turn. $87,000 withdrawn from Mom and Dad's account over 3 years. Checks you wrote. Forged signatures. A handwriting expert confirmed it. I spread the copies across the table. Mom, Dad, did you authorize these? My father stared at the checks, then at Kayla. What is this? Kayla knocked over her wine glass, standing up. You're insane. No. I'm just done covering for you. I looked at my mother. Done making excuses. Done pretending any of this was my fault. We're your family, my mother sobbed. You stopped being my family a long time ago. I closed the file. You're just people who hurt me. Used me. People I'm cutting out permanently. Behind me, footsteps. Ryan lunged toward me, face twisted with rage. Derek Chen stepped between us. 12 witnesses just watched you throw soup at her, Derek said calmly. You really want to add a salt to your problems. Ryan stopped, fists clenched, breathing hard. I looked around one last time. My mother crying into her hands, still wearing the pearl necklace I'd bought her. My father gray-faced and silent. Kayla looking like she'd aged 10 years. Ryan watching his world collapse. I'm leaving. Don't call. Don't text. Don't show up at my apartment or hospital. Try to contact me, I file a restraining order. Try to challenge the will, you lose everything. Try to drag me into your mess, I bury you with evidence. Naomi, please. My mother grabbed my arm. We can fix this. I'm sorry. I stared at her hand. The watch I didn't buy. The rings my father gave her. The wedding band from a marriage that produced 3 children but only loved 2. You're not sorry for how you treated me, I said quietly. You're sorry you're losing money. Sorry Ryan's going to jail. Sorry Kayla's in trouble. But you were never sorry about me. I pulled away and walked to the door. Behind me, chaos. Ryan shouting. Kayla crying. My mother begging. Guests murmuring, shocked and entertained. I didn't look back. As I reached my car, sirens. 2 police cars pulled up. I'd texted Sarah a code word 30 minutes ago. She'd called in a welfare check, made sure someone official would document what happened. Officers went inside. I heard my mother's panicked voice. Ryan's angry denials. Neighbors came out to watch. I got in my car and drove away. In the rearview mirror, my mother stood in the doorway holding the pearl necklace with both hands, watching me leave. I felt something. Not regret. Sadness for what could have been if they'd ever loved me even half as much as I'd loved them. But I didn't stop driving. The police documented everything. Soup in my hair and clothes. The burn mark on my face. Ryan's threats. Witnesses confirmed it all. Ryan got a formal warning for assault. They suggested a restraining order. I said I'd think about it. 6 months later, Ryan's condo sold at auction for half what he owed. His car was repossessed. Health Track liquidated for pennies. He moved to a studio apartment in a rough neighborhood and started managing night shifts at Dollar Store. Kayla was investigated for the forged checks. My parents paid back the money to avoid scandal. The DA agreed not to press charges if Kayla completed a fraud education program and 200 hours of community service. She dropped out of grad school and got a job at a coffee shop. My parents tried to help them, but they were financially stretched. They had been living beyond their means for years, keeping up appearances, funding Ryan and Kayla's lifestyles. Now it was catching up with them. They downsized to a smaller house. My father delayed retirement. My mother took a part-time job at a tutoring center. They sent me letters. Long letters apologizing, begging for another chance, promising to do better. My mother sent cards on my birthday, on Christmas, on random Tuesdays when she was feeling particularly guilty. My father called and left voicemails asking me to please just talk to him to let him explain. I didn't respond to any of it. I had said everything I needed to say at that dinner table. There was nothing left to discuss. Ryan sent me a text 6 months after the foreclosure. Just 2 words: I'm sorry. I blocked his number. I used part of Grandpa Harold's money to establish the Harold Fletcher Medical Scholarship for medical students from low-income families. Full tuition books and living expenses for students who demonstrated not just academic excellence but genuine compassion and commitment to underserved communities. Every year, I personally interviewed the finalists. Every year I saw myself in their struggles, their determination, their refusal to give up despite every obstacle. I finished my surgical residency at the top of my program. I was offered positions at 3 major hospitals and chose Charleston General because they offered the most challenging cases and the most innovative surgical techniques. I worked hard. I saved lives. I built a reputation as someone who stayed calm under pressure, who could handle the impossible cases, who never gave up on a patient. I bought a small house near Folly Beach, not far from where Grandpa Harold had lived. It had a porch where I could watch the sunset, a small garden where I grew tomatoes, and herbs, a spare room that I turned into a library. It was mine. Every piece of furniture, every picture on the wall, every book on the shelf was my choice. I had never lived in a space that was entirely mine before. It felt like freedom. I adopted a dog from the shelter, a scruffy mutt that had been returned 3 times because he was too energetic and didn't listen well. I named him Harold. He was perfect. Sarah came over every Sunday for dinner, continuing the tradition Grandpa Harold and I had started. We would cook together, drink wine, talk about our weeks. She was the sister I should have had, the family I chose instead of the one I was born into. One year after that birthday dinner, I was leaving my favorite coffee shop on King Street when I saw Ryan. He was wearing a dollar store vest, walking with his head down, looking 10 years older than he was. Our eyes met for a fraction of a second. I saw him recognize me. I saw him open his mouth, maybe to speak, maybe to apologize, maybe to ask for something. I looked away and kept walking. He was a stranger to me now. Less than a stranger. Just someone I used to know in a life I had left behind. That's when I knew I was truly free. Not when I revealed the will. Not when I bought his debt. Not when I walked out of that house. But in that moment when I felt nothing. No anger. No satisfaction. No guilt. Just nothing. He had no power over me anymore. None of them did. 2 years after the dinner, I met someone. Michael was an elementary school teacher in North Charleston. He had kind eyes and a gentle smile and absolutely no idea about my family drama or my money. He just knew I was a surgeon who worked too much and loved terrible reality TV and preferred hiking to fancy restaurants. We took things slow. We built something real based on who we actually were, not who we pretended to be. 6 months in, I told him everything. The whole story, start to finish. He listened without interrupting, without judging, without trying to fix anything. When I finished, he said, "You didn't betray your family. They betrayed you first. You just stopped letting them." That's when I knew he was the one. Because he understood that protecting yourself isn't the same as hurting others. That walking away isn't cruelty. That choosing yourself after years of choosing everyone else isn't selfish. 3 years after that birthday dinner, I operated on a 6-year-old girl named Emma who had been in a car accident. Her injuries were catastrophic. Her chance of survival was maybe 20%. I spent 11 hours in surgery doing everything my training and my instincts and my grandfather's wisdom had taught me. When Emma woke up and asked for her stuffed rabbit and complained about being hungry, I thought about Grandpa Harold, about how he had taught me that medicine is about showing up for people when they need you most, about how family isn't always blood, about how sometimes love means letting go of people who refuse to see your worth. I thought about how he showed up for me when nobody else did, how I showed up for him when everyone else walked away, how that reciprocal love, that earned love, that chosen love was worth more than any biological connection. I never spoke to Ryan, Kayla, or my parents again. They weren't at my wedding. They didn't know when I made chief of surgery at 36. They didn't know about the awards, the publications, the lives saved, the scholarship students I mentored. They weren't part of my story anymore. And I was completely okay with that. Because here's what I learned: true family isn't determined by blood. It's built through respect, loyalty, and genuine care. It's earned through showing up, through sacrifice, through love, demonstrated in actions, not just words. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is walk away from people who will never value you the way you deserve. My grandfather knew that. He tried to teach my father, but the lesson didn't take. So he taught me instead. His final gift wasn't just the money or the properties or the financial security, though those things changed my life. His real gift was permission. Permission to choose myself. Permission to stop waiting for people to see my worth and to simply know it myself. Permission to build a family of choice instead of obligation. That's the real inheritance. That's what changed everything. Not the money. The permission. So let me ask you this. Have you ever had to walk away from toxic family members? Have you ever chosen yourself even when it meant being called selfish? Have you ever stood up for yourself and felt the weight of the world fall off your shoulders? Drop a comment and tell me your story. Hit that like button if you believe that sometimes the strongest thing you can do is let go. And subscribe, because you never know when you might need to hear that it's okay to put yourself first. This isn't just my story. It's a reminder that you deserve better than people who make you feel small. You deserve a family that celebrates you, not one that tolerates you. And if you don't have that family by blood, you have permission to build it yourself. Choose the people who choose you back. That's the lesson. That's what matters. That's the legacy worth leaving.